My name is Cassie Reed, and I'll admit it, I was bored. Small town life in Edgewater, Wisconsin, carried a slow, languid inertia. Everyone knew everybody. Everybody knew your mother's maiden name. Everybody even knew how much you paid for your house. For thrills, some folks headed to the casino 3 miles down the highway. Others drank at O'Malley's until they forgot boredom altogether. Me? I had Jake. Jake had grown up in Edgewater too, but he'd never quite shaken a restless curiosity. He talked about urban exploration like it was an extreme sport: abandoned factories, defunct power plants, collapsed barns. It's a living history museum, he'd say, flashlight in hand, grinning. You get to unearth secrets nobody else sees. On the Friday before Halloween, under a harvest moon so bright it turned the fields anemic white, Jake dared me. "Let's go to Raven's Edge Asylum," he said. "After dark. We'll stay out of trouble." Raven's Edge had been shuttered for 40 years. In its heyday it treated mental illness, but by the late 1970s it was notorious for overcrowding, experiments, and unexplained patient disappearances. Then, after a fire in '82 that killed half a dozen residents and left corridors charred, the state closed it for good. Vine and ivy swallowed its stone facade. Boards sealed the windows. No one ventured past the rusted gates, at least, that's what people said. People say the spirits of the patients still haunt the cells, my friend Sarah told me. They say if you listen, you can hear them screaming. Jake shrugged. Screaming and haunting, and movies have taught you all you need to know. Come on, Cass. Live a little. They warned me not to go. But boredom is a potent drug, and curiosity its accomplice. So I went anyway. We met at dusk. The sun was a sliver of blood in the sky. Crickets rattled in the cornfields as we drove the gravel lane that led to the asylum. Jake parked his beat-up Jeep Wrangler under a sycamore whose branches scraped the windshield like skeletal fingers. We donned backpacks, flashlights, cameras, water, snacks, and stepped into the gathering gloom. The iron gates stood ajar, one hinge rusted loose. A "no trespassing" sign swung on its chain, half buried in a bend of brambles. Jake pushed it open the rest of the way, and we walked down the stone path, overgrown with grass and springtails. The asylum loomed ahead, a 3-story hulk of brick and limestone, its windows dark and cavernous. I swallowed hard. My flashlight's beam trembled across the facade. You could still make out the words carved in the stone lintel: Raven's Edge Asylum, EST 1892. Vines had crept into the letters, turning them into mottled shadows. My stomach tightened. "Do you really think we should be here?" Jake smiled, reassuring. "We'll be fine. We'll stick to the main hall and take pictures. No big deal." I nodded, though my heart drummed against my ribs. Something about the building felt alive, as though it watched us, waited. We slipped inside through a shattered window at the rear, Jake's idea of stealth. Glass crunched underfoot as we landed in the lobby. A chandelier lay broken on the marble floor. Sunlight filtered through boarded windows, streaking the dust with pale gold. The air felt musty, heavy with mildew. My nostrils flared at the scent: rotted plaster, dried blood, the perfume of decay. Every step kicked up motes that danced in our beams. I scanned the walls, where peeling wallpaper still showed the bright colors of a century past. On one wall, a mural of children playing, faces now smeared and stoic from water damage. The asylum's entrance desk stood in ruins, ledger books open and pages faded, names and dates scrawled in looping script. I whispered, "This place, it's like a mausoleum." Jake crouched by a scattered pile of metal file cabinets. He flipped open a drawer, revealing patient records, ages, diagnoses, dates of admission and discharge. Some end with neat dates. Others trail off into blank pages. "Look at this," he murmured. "People committed here, then vanished. No records of where they went." I felt a chill. Jake seemed enthralled, but I felt uneasy. I wanted to leave. But the dare, and the hope of capturing something extraordinary on camera, kept me rooted. We climbed the grand staircase to the second floor, each step groaning under our weight. The banister was smooth with wear, its finish worn to bare wood in places. The corridor stretched ahead like a cathedral nave. Doors lined each side, most hanging open or torn off their hinges. Our flashlights pierced the dark. In the flicker of my beam, I saw caution signs. Caution, biohazard and do not enter, staff only. The words made me shiver. Jake edged toward room 213, the self-harm unit. They say old instruments are still inside, he said. Scalpels, restraint chairs. I hesitated. The door lurched as he pushed it open. Inside, racks of rusted tools, a stained chair bolted to the floor, a small observation window with broken glass. A ragged photograph taped to the wall showed a group of nurses and doctors. Faces scratched out in ink. I shuddered at the vandalism, a deliberate erasure of identity. Let's go, I said, voice unsteady. This is too real. Jake clicked off his camera. We stepped into the hall when from somewhere behind us came the faintest scraping sound, like metal against metal. We froze. I held my breath. The scraper paused. Then resumed. Jake and I exchanged looks. Probably just rats, he said, but his voice quavered. We followed the noise down the corridor. It drew us to room 217, the isolation cell. The door was closed. Heavy, reinforced steel. But the scraping came from within. Jake pressed his ear to the door, then grabbed the handle. It rattled but wouldn't budge. He tried again, harder. The scraping stopped. The handle twitched under his hand, like something on the other side tried to turn it back. Get back, I whispered, but he didn't hear. Jake stepped back. I thought he'd give up. But then he jammed his flashlight beam through the keyhole. The beam fell across two eyes reflected in the metal, a pair of sickle-shaped eyes, too large, too narrow for a human. I stumbled back, heart leaping. The door shuddered under the weight of something heavy. The scraping started again, slower, agonizingly deliberate. Jake backed away, white-faced. We ran down the hall, crashing through a side door into a ward full of empty beds. The metal frames clinked as we rushed by, the scraping echoing behind us, then gone. 6. Flight through darkness. We didn't stop. The main corridor felt endless, a tunnel in which the dust choked me. At each turn, shadows slithered just beyond the light. My flashlight beam caught shapes, a handprint smeared on a wall, fresh enough to be wet, footprints splattered in a crimson liquid before vanishing into walls. Jake and I grabbed each other's arms, urging one another forward. We fled down staircases and across crumbling tile floors until at last we burst through a set of double doors into the courtyard. The sky had turned pitch black. The moon was gone behind storm clouds. No stars, no wind. Just the hush of death. We staggered toward the gates, one of which had fallen entirely off its hinges. As we reached it, a sound froze my blood, a low growl, coming from the broken window above us. We looked up and saw an elongated silhouette hunched in the glass, its limbs too long, joints at impossible angles. It pressed its face against the glass, a skull-like maw, lids glistening. Then it leapt, vanishing into the dark. Jake screamed, and we tore across the courtyard. My lungs burned, my legs felt like rubber. The jeep sat under the sycamore. I scrambled inside, hot-fingered the ignition. The engine caught. We backed up, tires spinning gravel, and roared away. 7. Aftermath. We drove without speaking for miles. The headlights cut swaths through the forested highway. Jake's knuckles were white on the wheel. I didn't dare look back. We reached my apartment at midnight. Inside, the lights seemed too bright, the walls too confined. I wanted to turn on every lamp, but feared they'd reveal something in the corners. Jake collapsed onto my couch. "You saw that," he said, voice shaking. "It wasn't a ghost." I nodded. It was something else. We reviewed footage on his camera. Most was dark or useless, just static shadows. But in one clip, caught briefly as we bolted from the asylum, was a flash of pale arm, too long, too slender, and a slash of crimson where something had reached for the lens. We didn't sleep. Over the next days, I researched Raven's Edge Asylum like a man possessed. Old newspaper clippings spoke of Dr. Harold Finch, director from 1950 to 1970, rumored to have pursued unorthodox treatments, surgical fusion of brain tissue, injections of unknown compounds, experiments into sensory deprivation. Patients termed unresponsive were transferred to the Annex, a basement wing closed off after the fire. Officially sealed. Unofficially, whispered to contain Finch's greatest failures. Jake dug at town records. The fire report cited an electrical fault. But hospital staff said it was arson. Finch, they said, had lit the wing aflame to contain something he'd created. Something he couldn't control. I called my friend Mason, a structural engineer, and asked about that annex. It's collapsed, he told me grimly. Sealed in. They bricked it over. No one's been down there since demolition began. I shivered. The rumble of that collapsed wing echoed in my dreams. Low, guttural, like a monster's sneer. Jake and I decided we would go back. But not for thrills. We would find the annex, document what lived there, and warn the world. They had warned me not to go. Now the real dare began. Under a new moon, we returned. No more daring facade, now we were trespassers with a purpose. We donned headlamps, thick gloves, and dust masks. Jake carried a bolt cutter, I had a crowbar. Together, we slipped inside. We navigated to the basement via a service grate behind the kitchen. The stairwell groaned as we descended. On the third landing, we found a bricked-over doorway, mortar too fresh for its age. Jake used the bolt cutter to break rebar anchors. I leveraged the crowbar into the crumbling mortar. Bricks tumbled into the hull. We peeled them away until the arch opened to a passage sealed by cold brick. We pressed forward, dust engulfing us. The passage narrowed. Water dripped from unseen pipes. The smell of burnt sugar was stronger here, mixed with the iron stench of rust and decay. Then we emerged. The chamber was vast, an old recreational hall, co-opted for Finch's experiments. The floor was a mosaic of cracked tile, the dome above, a web of corroded steel beams. At the center, a pit window looked down into darkness. A grated cover stood open. I shone my light down. The pit plunged 20 feet, walls slick with algae and ancient blood. At its base, something shifted. A glint of white bone or ceramic. I gasped. We rigged a rope and descended. At the bottom, the air was nearly solid, cold, damp, reeking of iron and sweet rot. The pit floor was littered with debris, rusted surgical tables, shattered syringes, and a twisted mass of cables fused to fragments of what looked like bone. I felt nausea rise. The cables writhed, coiling like living worms. Then we heard a low sigh. From the cables? From the walls? A shape emerged, a sinewy body, pale as frost, sinews exposed and pulsing. Eyes, black, lidless, hung in the sockets. Its arms were too long, its hands ended in hooked metal claws. It stared at us with a hunger that froze my spine. We backed away. It slithered up the pit walls, its claws scraping stone. The scent was overwhelming, burnt sugar, blood metal, chemical decay. It lunged. Adrenaline blazed. I yelled, and Jake scrambled up, pulling on the rope. The creature followed, flexibility defying logic. Its claws gouged the plaster as it climbed, leaving rivulets of dark ichor. We reached the top, thrown ourselves through the gap, and slammed the bricks back in place, clods of mortar wedged haphazardly. The creature thrashed behind us, clawing madly, sound muffled by brick. We ran up the stairs, two at a time, burst into the yard. The night air hit me like a tidal wave of relief. Behind us, the asylum's lights flickered once, an unearthly glow, and then went dark. We didn't stop until our jeep came into view. We leapt inside, locked the doors, and tore away down the gravel lane. Now I sit in my apartment, lights blazing, recording this on shaky hands. Jake's gone home, too shaken to talk. We won't sleep. I can't wash the smell from my skin. My dreams are filled with that thing's hollow gaze and the rasp of its breath. They warned me not to go. They said things lingered there. They were right, and they were wrong. It was never a ghost. It was flesh and metal, a creature born of human hubris and madness. An experiment unmade by fire and time. If you ever hear about Raven's Edge Asylum, stay away. If someone dares you to go inside after dark, refuse. Because curiosity killed more than the cat that night, it almost killed me. I shouldn't have gone in there. And sometimes, when the wind rattles my windows, I swear I hear the scraping of claws on concrete, searching, waiting for the next unwitting fool brave enough to cross that threshold. Because some doors, once opened, never truly close. And some horrors, once freed, never go back where they belong.